Hi, this is Derek M. Cook with another look at LEGO Masters Episode 2. Minor spoilers, okay, actually big spoilers, because I'm going to talk about who won this week's competition and ultimately who went home. Episode 2 was just like Episode 1. It was appointment television. I didn't just set the DVR to come back and watch later. I had to watch Wednesday night because I was that excited about LEGO Masters. My wife and I sat down on the couch, turned it on. I busted out some Lego to work on while watching the show. In fact, I'm working on a couple of mocks right now for the upcoming Bricks Cascade convention. They're coming along okay. I have a lot more work to do before the convention though, so keep your fingers and tentacles crossed. I can actually pull it up. Tentacles. I'm going to come back to that here in a moment. This week's challenge was the Blow It Up challenge. Now, this is similar to what they did on the Australian version of LEGO Masters. Let me know in the comments down below if you're getting tired of me comparing this to the Australian version of the show. The thing is that there are some similarities and some big differences that I appreciate and have some mixed feelings about some of them as well. We'll get to that here in a moment because something happened in this episode that was different than what we've seen in the Australian version of the show. Anyway, back to this week's episode. Basically, they had to make a build and then blow it up. They only had 11 hours to do it this time around, and you know, I struggle with this challenge. I struggled with it with the Australian version as well. The thing is, I don't want to break my toys. I was never one of those kids who put firecrackers in his G.I. Joe action figures. I didn't set fire to things or anything like that. I liked my toys, and because of that, I didn't try to break my toys, and that extended to models and Lego. In fact, I felt myself really identifying with Judge Jamie this time around when he looked at Judge Amy and told her that he doesn't really believe in breaking Lego, which was pretty adorable, actually. Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I don't believe in breaking Lego either. It is disheartening and sickening and soul-crushing when something breaks, when you're working on it, Lego-wise. My very first mock, once I got back into doing Lego, once I got out of my dark age, was a sculpt, or I guess a build, of Frankenstein's monster's head. I broke it down and rebuilt it, and at one point, it did fall onto the floor because I was working on a very small space, and when it fell, pieces went everywhere. It didn't completely break, but it was rough. And yeah, that Frankenstein's monster's head really wasn't the best build in the world. I think what I'm working on now is much better. That's besides the point. Bottom line is, I don't like breaking my Lego, so this episode probably was not one of my favorites of the two so far, and probably won't be. If the Australian version is any indication, the breaking of the Lego displays or models or builds was my least favorite episode on that series as well. Now, I get it. It makes for a dramatic, spectacular, cinematic experience with colors and pieces flying all over the place, and you kind of have to think a little bit differently because you're not just thinking about building something cool, you're thinking about what it's going to look like when it explodes. And I mean, I get it. There is some technique and some challenges there, but it's just not my bag, you know? And because of that, I really wanted to spend more time looking at the builds. There was no Hollywoodization, Lego movieization of the builds this time around. In episode 1, they did some animations showing what the theme parks would look like. In this week's challenge, there was none of that. It was just, here's your build, here's the story, well, let's break it. And they had 3 different ways to break it: baseball bat, explosive, or drop. And given that the Australian version did the same challenge with the same 3 different ways to break the models, I'm a little surprised they went with all 3. I mean, really, the most spectacular explosion was the explosion, blowing them up. Dropping them, hitting with a baseball bat, yeah, it's cool to see Will Arnett make some Batman puns. And I'm sure he got a kick out of breaking the Lego with the bats, but yeah, I just would have preferred to see them all explode if you have to do it. I'm not saying I've disliked the episode. I did. I really enjoyed some of the builds that we saw, and I wish we spent more time with them. Boone and Mark, our Portland guys, the Bearded Builders, the team that I'm pulling for so far, had one of the best builds because it played with perspective in a way that I think some of the other builds really hadn't tapped into. And what I mean by this is their build was a couple of kids on a couch playing a video game, and the TV screen was clear so that you could see through it. There was nothing there, it was just empty space. You could see through the TV screen where there was a larger-than-life-size robot and unicorn spaceship fighting each other, kind of implying that those are the characters or the things that the kids on the couch are controlling. And I thought that was really cool, and I would have liked to have seen maybe some of that Lego movie magic done to show the kids playing on the couch with their controllers and then seeing these things move outside of the TV screen. It was pretty cinematic. They just didn't shoot it cinematically. And I'm holding out that maybe Fox did shoot some things like this, and we'll include it later. Last week's episode, they did shoot the monorail going through the entire Dream Park theme park, and it did turn up online on the LEGO Masters YouTube channel. It was really neat. And again, I wish they had done that with some of these other builds. Some of the other builds that really stood out to me, actually, there's only one. And that was the build by Amy and Tyler. Nicknamed the Newlyweds, they created this tentacled monster that would explode spectacularly when it was time to go. It looked really cool. It reminded me of a combination of a Cthulhu-esque kind of beast and a beholder from Dungeons and Dragons. It was really neat. It had some cool tentacle action, and I just really liked it. This, however, leads me to probably my biggest complaint with LEGO Masters, and this goes to LEGO Masters Australia as well as the original LEGO Masters in the UK, and that's they didn't show us how some of these things were done. Now look, I'm just now getting out of my dark age. I'm just now getting back into doing Lego, and I know that there are people watching this show that are really, really into Lego and really know how to do some amazing things with the bricks. But I also expect or assume there are a lot of people watching this show who aren't nearly as technically advanced as the masters or the contestants that you see on television. And because of that, I would have liked to have had maybe just a little 3 to 5 minute segment where we are taught a technique, whether it's making a Lowell sphere, which I still have never done and probably should work on at some point, or in the case of Amy and Tyler's build, they were very secretive about how they were making their tentacles move. And I get that they were trying to hide it from the other contestants. They wanted to kind of surprise everybody and not give anybody any ideas because the build space is wide open. Anybody can kind of look over and see what everybody else is doing. So I get that part of it, but as an audience member, as a viewer, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more about how that was done. I have some ideas, but again, I'm just now getting back into this thing. I'm still working on my snot technique, you know what I mean? So it would have been really interesting to learn a little bit more about the how and the why. And maybe that's something that's on their YouTube channel or on their website, and I just haven't found it yet. I know that a handful of the contestants have YouTube channels of their own, like Boom, and a lot of times they'll show off what they've done in the past and maybe even offer some instruction. I think some of the contestants from LEGO Masters Australia have done this as well. If you know of any online tutorial sites, YouTube sites, that show people how to create some of these more unique LEGO constructs, I'd love to hear about it. Maybe leave a note down in the comments down below. I'm really glad this particular build won because it just looked so cool, and I get a really good vibe off of this team as well, as opposed to, well, Sam and Jessica. Now look, I don't know these people in real life, and I know that reality TV is structured in a way where they have to create compelling stories and drama to make it television. It's not really real. I mean, they only have the contestants and the people on the reality TV show give them to work with, and if there's some drama, I'm sure it's going to get exploited in the editing room. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not judging them. That's just how reality TV works. And there was some tension in this team, and it really stood out. It was quite uncomfortable, actually, as a viewer. I hope we don't see a lot more of that as the show continues. I appreciate Will Arnett stepping in, or at least us being given the impression that Will Arnett stepped in and kind of smoothed things over, using a technique that he uses with his children, which wasn't necessarily demeaning or belittling, but it did seem a little like, this is what we do with my kids. Now you two adults do the same thing, you know? Anyway, I really enjoyed the show nonetheless. I just didn't enjoy it as much as last week's episode. Now, next week is actually one of my favorite challenges from the Australian version of the show, so I'm looking forward to that. The big difference that I mentioned earlier between US and Australian LEGO Masters so far has to do with the golden brick. Now, in the Australian version, if you want to play the golden brick and get out of a challenge, treat it like an immunity idol or whatever, you just play it at the beginning of the challenge and you don't even have to bother building. You get the day off. Well, in this particular version, in the US iteration of the show, you still participate in the build, and then after the fact, you're given the option to play the brick and then get out of judging. Where I suppose I can see that as being more fun, and maybe a little bit less of a gamble. That if you... I don't know. I just don't know if I like the difference between both versions yet. We'll see. I also thought it was kind of fun, maybe a bit too far, but it kind of fun, the way some of the other contestants were razzing the owners of the Golden Brick. So the people that went home, it was unfortunate. What struck me as a little odd is that when the contestants were told they had to transfer their build from their workstation to the destruction area, they made it pretty clear that it had to be strong enough to handle transportation. So why they built their build on these floppy little base plates, I don't understand. Now, that might have just been what they had access to. I know that they don't have every brick under the sun. They have quite a bit, but they don't have access to everything. And I know for me personally, actually, for one of the mocks that I'm working on for Bricks Cascade, I'm struggling a little bit because I also need a flat, large surface area to put my bricks on. And the largest pieces that I have are base plates. And again, they're very floppy. I'd love to hear what you thought of this episode of LEGO Masters. Please leave a comment down below. And if you are watching this video and you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing and hitting the little thumbs up there to let me know that you think I'm doing a good job. Because if I'm not, I need to do better for you guys and gals that are watching this. Please also share this with all of your LEGO-loving friends. I'd really appreciate that. Also, I'll make sure there are links in the comments down below that'll take you to my Monster Kid Radio podcast and YouTube channel and everything else that I've got going on. And stay tuned, because in addition to these reviews of LEGO Masters, I'm also going to be posting some other non-LEGO but non-classic monster movie content here on It's Pronounced Cook. Of course, classic monster movie content will end up on the Monster Kid Radio podcast and the Monster Kid Radio on YouTube channel. My name's Derek M. Cook, and I'll talk to everybody next time.